Meanwhile, the Packers made easy work of the Seahawks without Earl Thomas, a 38-10 win. Aaron Rodgers had 3 TDs and 0 interceptions. Russell Wilson was a different story. We'll get into that in just a moment. Green Bay picked him off a career high 5 times. Since Rodgers declared that Green Bay can run the table, the Packers have now won 3 straight. Stephen A., this is your boy. Is it time to take him seriously that the Packers can do this and run the table?
He's Aaron Rodgers. I have to take him seriously. Now, that doesn't take away from how awful the Seahawks were. They were absolutely abominable last night. Losing Earl Thomas clearly had a very profound detrimental effect on them defensively. But it wasn't supposed to be to this degree.
Right.
I mean, it wasn't supposed to be this bad. It wasn't supposed to be this bad. So something else is missing there. But I think that I have confidence that the Legion of Boom will get it together because I just think that they're Rough Riders and this is an aberration more so than the norm. What I have to pay attention to is that we've been talking MVP. We talked Tom Brady. We talked Derek Carr. We've talked Matt Ryan at one point. You know, all of this
Zeke,
other
Dak.
stuff. Zeke, Dak, et cetera, et cetera. Has anybody taken notice of Aaron Rodgers? I mean, I'm not saying they're going to win.
Numbers.
I'm not saying they're going to win because they got 6 losses on the season. Don't get me wrong. Completing 65% of his passes, 32 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, a QBR of 72, a passing rating of 101 with 3 games to play. I mean, this is MVP kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And so the bad man that he is, that everybody was talking about, brought up his brother on The Bachelor, talking smack about his own sibling. He should be ashamed of himself. You got everybody trying to get into their personal life. They start bothering his woman, Olivia Munn. I mean, everywhere he went, Aaron Rodgers being bothered. And all he's done is ball. All I'm saying is, you got Chicago, you got a home game in Minnesota. I see you winning those games. You got the last game of the regular season at Detroit, who's already beaten you. But Detroit got the Giants coming up. They could lose that game. So it's about to get very, very interesting. I'm still not going to take Green Bay to that level because I still don't trust their defense, Donovan. But I must confess, the bad man has been the bad man.
He's definitely put up MVP numbers, and I look at it in the quarterback race, so to speak. Aaron Rodgers, Matt Ryan, Derek Carr, Matthew Stafford. These are guys who their teams have started to win early and they've continued it on. Now you're seeing the late push like we've seen from a lot of other players who have won MVP awards. And I think this is more than just the Green Bay Packers. This is more about the Seattle Seahawks. Defensively and offensively, they're not the same team. They have no identity on offense. They have no running game. Rawls is not Marshawn Lynch. He's not the Rawls from last year. Remember, he's coming off of an injury. You're putting so much pressure on Russell Wilson, which I'm going to be honest, I'm going to be the first one to say it. This offseason, you better find you a number 1 wide receiver. You need to find you a back that's going to be there 3 downs and be able to take pressure off of your quarterback. Go get some offensive linemen.
And we're gonna talk about Russell.
And then for the defense, it's not the same defense even with Earl Thomas in there. Yeah, he's their spiritual leader, but so is Cam Chancellor. People aren't throwing to Richard Sherman's side as much because they're going after their number 2 and 3 DB.
That's right.
And they're having a lot of success.
Why bother Richard Sherman?
Exactly.
Why bother?
When they're going after their second and third corners, and everyone is having success doing it. So when I look at it in the sense at this particular point, it's starting to catch up to them. When you get to the Super Bowl once, twice, you think we still have the mantra, we still have the recipe for success. No, you need to add more pieces to the puzzle. Yeah, having Jimmy Graham is going to help because he's a security blanket for a guy like Russell Wilson. But Russell can't do it on his own. Now, did he play bad? Absolutely, he played awful. This is the worst game of his career.
Right. No
and they will be able to bounce back. But can they bounce back consistently enough going through the end of the year and playoffs and still play at that elite level? At this particular point, I can't see that because now we compare them to the Dallas Cowboys, and both of them are having issues that I think it's going to now go to possibly a Giants team or something to that effect.
Like in the sound of that, Max.
Well, I mean, are we talking Russell Wilson here, or are we talking Rodgers running the table? Because if we're talking Rodgers running the table, yeah, he can do it. And by the way, the MVP talk, Stephen A., a couple weeks ago, we asked, is Rodgers elite? I said yes, because there were only 5 guys ahead of him. I gave him an A- so far because he was the best player in the NFL who wasn't in the MVP conversation. But clearly, that puts him within striking distance, and he has struck. Aaron Rodgers, over the last several weeks, is back to looking like the best player in the game that he was for about, 3, 4, 5 years before that. Before last season, where he also was something less than his normal self. And if he's that guy, yeah, they can run the table. I mean, you look at the Bears, whatever, the Vikings, but not on the road. And then Zimmer is a problem for him, but again, not at Minnesota. And then the Lions. And the Lions are good, but they're not unbeatable. He could actually run the table because when he's right, he's the best quarterback in football and one of the greatest of all time. So you got to give him that shot.
Donovan, I want to go back to you because I want you and Max to be privy to something that I noticed. And we all noticed that game against Atlanta on October 16th.
Right.
When they went up against Julio Jones and Richard Sherman was disgusted and going at one of the corners and had to be restrained and stuff before they started jumping around with him, getting his attitude right. That was a very defining moment for me because it highlighted his disappointment with other individuals not necessarily doing their job. I looked yesterday, and you know what I disliked a lot about, and this is just me, there's nobody else, and I understand that I may be stepping out there just a little bit, reading a little bit too much into it, but I'm dead serious when I say this. How you handle losing resonates with me when I sit there and look at you around your other teammates. You watch Russell Wilson in that post-game conference. Very nonchalant about it. Yeah, I hate turning the ball over, but, we move on from here. That's not a big deal, Donovan. It wouldn't be a big deal if it were the Eagles. It wouldn't be a big deal with the teams that I've seen you on and others on. But this particular team, with the mental makeup that they had, one of the reasons why we talked about the Legion of Boom was because they were fierce. And I remember Cam Chancellor and the Richard Shermans and others of the world, they used to talk about beast mode.
Yeah.
And the kind of attitude that he infused in the rest of the dudes just because he was the way that he was. And I'm seeing him going, whether it's Christine Michael, whether it's Rawls or anybody else, you're not getting that now. And so now the face of your franchise, particularly on the offensive side of the ball, is Russell Wilson, who no doubt can play at an elite level at times. But at the same time, that attitude, when you stink up the joint, even though there were passes that were dropped and the ball with interception wasn't his fault, when you have experiences where it's clear that you should be visibly disgusted and you don't have that, I kind of think that with that particular team, that works against you. What do you say to that?
You're reading too much into it.
Okay.
You know my attitude.
Okay. Yeah.
One thing you don't want to do, especially going through the media, is now all of a sudden banging on podiums, talking about how upset and pissed off you are. You don't do that. And as a quarterback, you have to keep your composure. Because now, when we get to the film room, I'm being accountable for my mistakes that I'm making. Mm-hmm. I'm coming out to the practice field and trying to clean that up. I'm discussing with the rest of the guys what we need to do right and what we need to eliminate.
But I think you're talking in general. What I'm saying is because of the team. I agree with you, but the only reason I'm bringing that up is because of the dudes they already have on the roster and how they will interpret that. Go ahead, Max.
Yeah, in other words, that given the chemistry of the team and the attitude of the team, Russell Wilson's attitude, which is normally good, hey, it's no big deal, may not jibe in that locker room as well. I disagree with that. I thought Russell Wilson handled it perfectly.
Yes.
First of all, I know 5 interceptions is a bad game. At least 2 of them that I can recall went off a guy's either hands or shoulder pads. Those weren't on Russell Wilson. And Russell Wilson is one of my favorites because he is very good at all phases of the game. But it's not like his arm is the greatest rocket you've ever seen. And when he's playing behind a bad offensive line, and they've been bad all year, and he doesn't have a running game, and now Earl Thomas is gone, and you're playing against Aaron Rodgers, who exposes that and exploits that, takes advantage of it, now Russell Wilson's behind the 8 ball even more because it takes the play-action threat out of everything, which the running game really needs. So I think it was just, and by the way, that's the first time that Russell Wilson has ever been blown out in his NFL career. Think about that. You ain't getting through a whole NFL career without getting blown out.
True.
So eventually it's going to happen. And why not now? A desperate Green Bay team, you're out Earl Thomas, you've got a bad O-line, the Packers show up, and Aaron Rodgers balls out, taking your play action away. I mean, that is when you might get blown out. I don't think this is that big a deal.
Everything that could happen happened in that game. And that's the reason why that game was largely such a much of a big deficit for a team that no one expected Seattle to lose that way. Now, let's get back to his attitude. I remember playing in my 11 seasons in Philadelphia, that was one that everyone wanted to critique as how I look after a loss, how I look after a win.
I was one of those people critiquing you. Yes,
and one thing is, you have to be who you are. Mm-hmm. And for Russell Wilson, he's always been a calm guy to take everything on his shoulder. I'm sure in that locker room, he's bringing up he's carrying that attitude like the Legion of Boom, but he's not on defense. Mm-hmm. He may have a defensive mentality as a quarterback, but he's still a quarterback in this game.
But to enlighten folks about my relationship with Donovan, he was quarterbacking in Philadelphia when I was a columnist with the Philadelphia Inquirer. And some of the times when we had discussions in the past was exactly what we're talking about now. So I will defer to him because he knows. But as a columnist, I would come up to Donovan and I'd be like this. You sure that's the right attitude to have because of the dudes around you? See, what I do is I pay attention to the other guys, too. I'm not saying that he was ever wrong for doing what he did or Russell Wilson's wrong. What I'm saying is the mental makeup of the troops around you and your ability to galvanize them is something I think plays a role from time to time as it's dictated to some degree by your attitude. But again, I could be wrong because I don't know. But that's on the outside looking in. I used to question him about that all the time. Am I right?
And as a quarterback, you can't go into the media and call people out.
No, I wasn't saying that.
You can't go out and say our offensive line.
I'm talking about himself. I was talking about himself.
But for himself, yes, he's taking it on his shoulder. But you just don't see that attitude right now. I'm sure when he gets home, he'll talk about what happened. And when he watches the film, he'll realize his mistakes and get it cleaned up for next week.
Okay.
All right. Let's leave it there.
Consider putting Tony in the game?
No.
Why not?
Yeah, we feel good about Dak playing quarterback for us right now.
Why wouldn't a relief quarterback work in the flow of the game?
Yeah, we just feel good about where Dak is right now with our football team.
Does ineffectiveness come into part of the equation as far as putting Tony in for Dak?
No.
Definitively.
Because no, it does not.
Notice how Jason Garrett said right now after everything. We feel good about Dak right now. But I want to go to Max here. Max, is this the beginning of the end for Dak?
No, and it goes to the point I was just talking about. You start with Johnny Unitas. It doesn't matter what quarterback you're talking about. No quarterback is great or will look great to everybody every single game through the season. Donovan McNabb, an underrated great quarterback in my opinion, had some games, Donovan, I'm sure, where you didn't look good to outsiders, right? To people observing from the outside. But in fact, if you, I'm sure, analyzed it, wasn't so bad either, was it? Your offensive line, wasn't playing well. The other defense was elite. The receiver broke down the communication. It wasn't where he was supposed to be, and it made you look worse than you actually were that day. And then some days, you just have a bad day too. The greatest players of all time, that's true for. Dak is excellent. They barely lost this year, as it turns out, basically just to the Giants. And I don't think the sky is falling for Dak Prescott.
No, wait a minute, Max. I mean, if as a quarterback, you have to be honest with yourself. If you played bad, you played bad. I'm not going to sit there and try to say, well, it wasn't as bad as you think it may have been when you watch the film. You know what type of player you are. You know the things that you've worked on. If you've missed passes or you've thrown them high or thrown them low, whatever it may be, I can be the first one to acknowledge that. In a sense, for Dak Prescott, he played bad. Let's just admit he played bad. They didn't win the game. But that doesn't take anything away from Eli either. I think when you look at what Jason Garrett said, and I'm not going to blow it up when he says right now, because to me it seems like he is truly petrified to say anything. This is the problem that I've had with the Dallas Cowboys.
Preach.
You are the head coach. You have to be the one who set the tone, not Jerry Jones, the owner. Guys may run into Jerry Jones in the hallway and be able to communicate with him a little bit about maybe contracts, what's going on with the team, whatever it may be. But for the guy standing in front of that auditorium, talking to me to get me fired up about playing the Giants for the second time and being able to redeem ourselves in Jason Garrett, you have to stand in front of the media and say, our starting quarterback is Dak Prescott. We're going to go as far as Dak Prescott takes us, not the backup Tony Romo. The problem is with this whole Tony Romo conversation, it's going to put more pressure on Dak Prescott. It's going to put more pressure on the whole offense when things don't go well. But Jason Garrett can put it to rest if he just step up and say, Dak Prescott is our guy. But we're going as far as he takes us.
But he won't step up.
He won't step up. And even Jerry Jones in the locker room looked like he was afraid to hurt Tony's psyche or something.
Let's call it what it is. And I don't mean this as negatively as it's going to sound, but Jason Garrett's a puppet. Let's be clear about it. He's happy to have the job. He doesn't want to lose the job. He was like damn near the adopted son of Jerry Jones because he was being paid $3 million. He's being paid the same as the head coach. Wade Phillips was being paid when he was the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys. Right. He was the heir apparent. So now we transition that level of affection, that family type atmosphere, that brotherhood, that father-son relationship rather. You take that and you transition that to Tony Romo. And what do you have? You have a situation where everybody's being sensitive, but we ultimately must adopt and fully embrace what the desire is here. The desire is, and this is why the Dallas Cowboys are dancing better than the late Gregory Hines, God rest his soul. This is why they're tap dancing like this. Because what they can't say and what they're striving to disguise is their desire that Tony Romo be the one that steps up in there. They have never supported Dak as much as they should have. Jerry Jones opening his mouth earlier this week is emblematic of that. And in the end, what it comes down to is that whether we like it or not, I have coined the phrase accident waiting to happen. I actually should brand that, for crying out loud. I should make money off of that. I'm slipping. Because the bottom line is Jerry Jones and Jason and all of them, Dak is the future, and they know that. But the run that the Cowboys are on this year, all of them, they want Tony to be a part of it, even if it's at the expense of Dak Prescott, which is why I wore this shirt. That's why I said I love Jerry Jones, because I knew he would open his mouth and do something stupid to sit up there and compromise everything that the Dallas Cowboys are about this year. He has done it. This team is vulnerable. I'm telling you right now, the Dallas Cowboys are in trouble. And like I said before, they will not go to the Super Bowl. This is beautiful, beautiful.
All right, they got the Bucks, Lions, and Eagles coming up, and we will also get into who is now the team to beat in the NFC a little later in the show. So you heard from these lovely gentlemen, their opinions on Dak's second loss to the G-Men this season, but we want to hear from you at home. Should the Cowboys start Tony Romo? Vote now. We'll share those results and react to them a little later in the show.
By the way, be clear, there's going to be some idiots out there who feel that way. They're going to be some idiots out there because they're panicking. That's what Cowboy fans do. See, that's the bane of my existence. It's not the team, Donovan, it's the fans. Yeah. They are all nervous right now because they're like, let's not mess this up. Oh man, we got, and they're calling for Tony Romo. I'm telling you, it's going to be a divide. Mark my word, that's Cowboy Nation for you. They're going to divide.
And I know how locker rooms are. There's a division in the locker room as well. You know, when they're probably looking at Dak Prescott, knowing how he played in that game and how long will this continue on. That's why I say I'm waiting to see how they overcome this adversity. Yep. This is something that's very big because this is your starting quarterback who you really don't know much about being a rookie. So I want to see how long this goes.
So much more than just a loss.